So if you haven't had a chance to grab a pizza, go for it.
Excellent. On the heavy side, but very delicious. Yeah, thank you so much.
Cool. Okay. First of all, I just want to say I think it's an amazing turnout. It's the Marquez Meetup that we've had. We've done. We have monthly meetings. Where Marquez project is part of the Link Foundation, AI and data specifically, and this is the first in-person one. It's amazing to see everyone. We do have a few representatives from Open Lineage. So we have Julian Legend, who's the lead on the Marquez project, and really seeing some really great adoption recently. And we also are lucky enough to have Mache visiting us as well. So he's been working on Open Lineage since day one when Open Lineage was prototyped in Marquez, or at least in the early stages. So really great to have Mache here.
And you flew all the way from Poland to be here.
Yes,
Just to be here, right?
Yeah. So I cannot leave Peter out. He's been pretty amazing to work with in the past 3 years now plus, and he's been working on Marquez UI. But him and we worked on a startup around Lineage, and there's some cool Lineage graphs that he's been able to put together through some amazing wizardry, or how do you say it? I don't know, magic with the UI. So, anyways, welcome and thanks to Astronomer. So I work at Astronomer. I'm a software engineer, work on data observability with Peter and Julian as well. So thanks for coming. And just a few things around one. If you haven't signed in, I just want to say if you do, you could grab some swag. You don't have to, but if you do sign up, it will just help us to know where people are coming from. Like, what is their background? Are they architects? Do they just want to learn how the lineage space is growing and the adoption of some really cool sort of projects and standards? Welcome. And if you haven't had a chance to grab food, there's pizza, and if you need more, we can order more. Also, Wi-Fi, that's important sometimes. So it's dark matter and space 231. So just remember the @ sign. And if you need it, I could bring up the slide again. All right, so with that, so we got one last notice, I promise, and we'll actually get into the presentation. We are recording this meeting, so just to let you know, it's something that we would like to do and host it on the Linux Foundation portal that we have for when we run the community meetings. So just to let you know, that's something we're doing. On the agenda, I do want to do some intros. So if anyone wants to introduce themselves, we're a small group. If you want to introduce yourself, I think that'd be cool. If you also have any questions or discussion points that you would like, we would love to hear it, and then we could save it for the end. We're also going to grab drinks after, so if you want to come join us and talk more about lineage there. We're going to go into the background and history of Marquez, and we're going to ask the question, why Marquez? Why did we build Marquez? Why did we open source it? And the sort of the journey behind the open source project. Peter is going to go through the web UI and some really cool changes that he's done to the website. We're trying to get a bit more mature on how we do our docs and centralize it. So he's been doing a lot of great work there. We're going to talk about Marquez at Astronomer and about our roadmap, which I think is going to be very, very interesting. So I'm going to start with a journey. How did Marquez come about? It's been quite interesting. So in 2018, we drafted a proposal for Marquez, not too far from here in Transbay. So Julian and we sat, at that time we were at WeWork, and we were building the next-gen data platform. So how do you start collecting sensor data from buildings? Like, that was a really important thing for WeWork, and we needed to build a platform that handles streaming, batch, was able to also handle authentication, opening doors. So it was very much event-based. And at the core of it, we needed to capture metadata. What was the jobs that were processing data? What was the schema of the output data set? So there was a lot that we were trying to do there. And within that meeting, I think no more than, it was like an hour plus, but it was us on a whiteboard talking about what a core model would look like for metadata if you were going to collect job data set and run metadata. During that time, I think, well, shortly after, I put together a design doc, and then that's really how the project came about. We went to LinkedIn, we went to Slack. So anyone in the Bay Area that wanted to hear what we were trying to do with this model, we met with them. And I think that really helped. We had significant feedback along the way. So I think the key thing was we were on the right track. I think that was the common message that we received. So we had our first commit again, of that year in July, we had our first commit. We were working very, very closely with Stitch Fix at the time. They were only a few blocks away, and they also helped name the project. So we worked with their data team, and they gave us significant feedback on the model. They made contributions, and pretty much that's the story. Shortly after that, I presented at the Data Council in New York, talked about the vision of the project, and it was well received. We're like, I think we should go out and build this. And that's when we did our first build in that year as well. So we did 0-1 a long time ago. And then we had an Airflow team. Whoa, doctor. Not interested in an update. But so we worked on the integration. We had a team that was providing Airflow as a service, and we needed to collect lineage metadata. So we extended an Airflow DAG, and that really became the first integration. We fed the class and then hooked into the tasks. So we did a custom integration, and it really worked well for us. And shortly after that, well, not shortly, maybe a year later, we incubated the project. We realized that Marquez needed a foundation around the project. Right now, or at the time, it was just WeWork. So we reached out to LFAI and Data. At the time, there was only a couple of projects. Now, I can't even keep track of how many logos or how many open source projects they've incubated and also graduated. So we put together a proposal shortly after we joined the foundation, and then Julian, myself, and Peter, we did a startup around Marquez, and that became, that was called DataKin. And since then, within that time, especially, how did we get to Astronomer? There was a acquisition that happened. So we've been working on that since the acquisition. So we haven't moved away from focusing on Marquez or Open Lineage. So when we prototyped Open Lineage at DataKin, we never thought it would get to this point. And there's some slides that I'll show you that I think really hammers the message that there is a need for a standard for lineage, and Marquez was that model that eventually became how the standard shaped. So like the fields and properties, a lot of that actually comes from Marquez, and which is why it's the reference implementation of Open Lineage. So the prototype happened. We did the support in 0.12, and now we're on 0.41 or 4.2. So there's been a lot of releases until that, or since then. And I think we've also seen a steady growth. So from the day we started, their Open Lineage definitely helped, because as Open Lineage became a standard that people were interested in, they also looked at Marquez and said, oh, this is an interesting project that I could also spin up within my infrastructure and test out what I can do with the standard. So we've seen a nice steady growth, and I think that's really helped for the project. And if we look at December 2019 until now, we've seen significant, it just starts, I think it's just natural growth, and also the forks as well. We've seen an increase in forks, just people wanting to contribute one-off fixes or committing more heavily, like we have seen with Asana. For sure, they're right down the road, by the way. So some logos, we have Asana, we have Decathlon, Graphite, so Ageria, which is not another Linux Foundation project, Audible, Northwestern. So there's a lot of logos that have looked at the project and said, you know what, I could adopt the entire stack, which is UI plus backend, or just the backend API. With Astronomer, we're just focusing on the backend. So we have our own front end for querying lineage and displaying it to our users. But before I go too deep, some of you I haven't seen before, which is great. And you might not have heard about lineage, let alone open lineage. So open lineage is a standard to collect lineage metadata. And the problem that it's trying to solve is this, where you have different set of tools, different set of schedulers, engines that all have interesting detail around dependencies. So which jobs have written to that data set or executed SQL, and being able to extract that information is very key, especially if you want to catalog data sets like in the Munson, or if you want to display the lineage graph like in Apache Atlas or Marquez, where we have lineage plus metadata versioning. So this is just difficult because every system on the bottom has to make sure that they don't. Anytime there's a new release, they don't have to, or there's no breaking changes. And I think maintaining that in separate projects is a lot of work. So that's where OpenLink comes in. We can say, let the standard and the integrations that exist take care of all that for you, and you have the benefit of just consuming the events. But you don't have to take my word for it. We have, so this is just a blog that Amazon did, and they talk about MWAA with open lineage, and they use Marquez as an example to display your lineage, and I thought this was just a great post. So if you haven't checked it out and you're interested in running any of these tools or systems, go check out this blog. And I think as of recently, well, I don't think as of recently, we have Google Cloud who has adopted open lineage, which is amazing. It's great to see that this ecosystem is growing and adoption is happening. And that's a lot of work from Julian and the open lineage team that has been working on this for quite some time. So they have an endpoint where you can ingest open lineage events, just like Marquez does. So Marquez has an endpoint that adheres to the standard, and it processes events a certain way, just like in this case, the data prop, I believe. Which one is this? Their data catalog. Yeah. Okay, Dataplex. I was getting confused. Their Dataplex, they process events a certain way. So I think that's really cool thing about the standard is if you want to write a consumer and process the events, it's up to you how you do that. So I think that's cool. Yeah, so I think it's just great to see adoption growing.
And this week, there's been a great blog by Metaphor about their adoption.
Right, okay. By the way, I did not know. Okay, yeah, that's amazing. So we have Mars from Metaphor.
Say hello.
Oh, nice to meet you. So I got a chance to meet them, meet some of their co-founders in Toronto. So we did a meetup around open lineage, and we got a chance to get a really cool demo on how you're using open lineage, home level lineage. And I thought that was really amazing. So really great to see. And let's make sure we let more people know about that blog post.
Yeah, we did push on social media.
Okay, yeah, let's do it. Okay, so that's some background. And by the way, any questions around that? So I don't want to keep going. So
Did you want to do intros?
Yes, I think it's a good place to start. I warmed everyone up. So let's do some intros. Anyone would like to start, or we could do. Maybe I'll start.
I think we should go in order.
Yeah. Yes. So hello everyone. I'm Willie. I'm the co-creator and project lead for Marquez project. I work at Astronomer. Worked with Julian for way too long now, and Peter. I work with Peter as well. So I work on data observability and focus on lineage.
Yeah, Peter, also work at Astronomer on the observability. I work on a Marquez project and the UI rewrote it since inherited it from WeWork, and I've done a lot of the interfaces for our commercial product as well. And yeah, we do a lot of work on top of Marquez specifically for our commercial use cases like alerting and root cause analysis. So that's it.
Hi everyone, I'm also Peter, but I do not work here. I just started about a month, 2 months ago, and we're working on something in a very similar space, so just need to learn about what's going on.
Would you like little
Yeah,
snake?
we're on the front.
Little snake.
So I'm Maciej. I work for a Polish data company called Getting Data. I'm from Warsaw, Poland. I've been working on open image, especially recently on integration Airflow.
Yeah, and it's not as of, so that's an important note. So as of 2.7 Airflow now just comes pre-built in with Open Lineage. So you can configure Open Lineage, and that's how you can extract image metadata. So yeah, I think it's amazing.
And Match is also an Airflow computer.
Yeah.
Cool. I'm Shay, Metaphor, founding engineer and co-founder there. Worked with Mars at LinkedIn previously as well, on Data Hub, where, I think we were in the Blue Jeans call talking with you then about Marquez in the very, very early days. Yeah, I think that's it.
Welcome.
Mars, CTO, founder Metaphor. Like Shay said, the core of the team came out of LinkedIn. Kind of similar story, backstory as Julian and Willie. Yeah, we do data catalog. Collect a lot of metadata and then try to also provide some sort of metadata platform for various use cases.
Yeah, hi, my name is Günther. I'm a renewable manager at Yelp. I'm leading one of the data splitting teams. And yeah, I'm mostly here to get more context about what Marquez is.
Hi, I'm Werner. I'm the founder of Art of Life. I represent Austrian manufacturing companies and do tax counting for these companies. I'm a developer, but at a strategic level.
David here. I'm a data engineer. I'm currently in between jobs and I've heard a lot about Village.
Nice to see you again, Dave.
My name is also David, and I'm an architect at Transamerica. I specialize in big data technology, and I'm here to learn more about the source tools that are out there for big data. And potentially help my company any pitch.
Yeah, that's important.
I'm Julian. I'm the project lead for Open Lineage. I'm chief architect at Astronomer, and yeah, that's it.
I'm Michael. I'm an infrastructure engineer who works at Union.ai, who maintains a workflow engine called Flight. I'm here more out of personal interest rather than anything for the company knows.
Wait, is that flight from?
Yeah, Flight.
Oh,
Yeah, from the origin. And now you.
yeah, welcome. All right. Well, thanks everyone for introducing yourselves, and let's just dive into it. And I'm going to talk about Marquez. There are some slides around that, and there's also some demos and some, I think, some cool stuff that I can show you that we've been building, both at Astronomer, but also on the open source side. I do like to start out with this slide. It's probably the most messiest, but I think it's important to just put it all out there. Marquez is an operational lineage service. It's not a data catalog. We do get confused sometimes with that. I mean, we do. I would say Marquez is a lightweight data catalog because you do need to catalog your data sets. You need to catalog your jobs, but it's not going to be automatic. What you guys are doing far beyond what we could achieve, but that's not really our goal. Our goal is if your pipeline fails, or at least the flow of data, if there's an issue, we want you to be able to troubleshoot that using Lineage. Like we mentioned before, the project is open source. It's incubating in LFI data, but as of recently, our batch is going to get bumped to something a bit more significant, which is great. News will be coming out this year. And we are the reference implementation of Open Lineage. We've just been lucky enough to have the Open Lineage standard be based off our model. And I think but yeah, so we just have that benefit. And the model itself, it's a centralized metadata management model. So there's a core model, and then there's APIs that allow you to list data sets, look at runs, look at the run history, be able to look at different data set versions, compare the schema of those data set versions. It's a block built in. And we also store Open Lineage events for sort of after the fact processing. There's search built in as well. So The features at the moment, I think what we've been trying to stress is that you don't need anything beyond a server and a Postgres database. That's very simple deployment. As you get more and more usage, that is going to change. Postgres can take you very far. And at Astronomer, we're reaching some crazy performance numbers, which is good. So like we're seeing a lot of data in the terabytes, and it's allowed us to extend the model and understand where are some bottlenecks. The endpoint that we expose, probably just like what you guys do at Metaphor, is just an endpoint that allows you to ingest open these events. So we process those events and populate the Marquez model. We, at the moment, we're going to support static lineage, and that's going to be something that's on our roadmap, which I'll get into on what that means. But the key thing for the lineage graph is we understand the lineage graph as it changes for a run. So if you have 500 jobs that are running on different times, different schedules, and also have different dependencies in terms of data sets, you want to know if a job runs, what that looked like when the job completed. Are you able to run a query, a lineage query, to understand at the run level how your data changed? And we also apply metadata versioning mostly on jobs and data sets. So if your code changes or if your inputs and output change, we do version the job, and we have a little label for that, and we associate job versions to input and output dataset versions. We also look at the dataset version, dataset metadata. And at the moment, there's two cases for that: is if your schema changes, or when a run completes, it touches the data. We kind of just make a really silly assumption, but actually a really, I think, fair one. That run, if it had an output as a data set, we're going to version that. So that has caused some problems because that
So say that again, that run, if it had what?
if when a run specifies its outputs, so let's say it's a table in Postgres and it writes to it just like an insert, we will assume that that data has been modified. So we don't track that. We don't track the diff of the data, but we create a new version in our model for that data set.
Okay.
Yeah. So technically, you can use the run ID and add a column in your table if you want, and be like, these are the rows that run touched. But we're making an assumption that if your output data set for a run is part of that processing, we're going to create a new version in our table.
For some cases, OpenImage can do something stronger, which is if you write to Delta Lake or Apache Iceberg, we know from them what actually the version is. So if your job doesn't modify the table, it will be the same version as an OpenImage facet. So
yeah, so this is, I think, where Marquez can really be a bit smarter using some facets in OpenImage. Right now, it's just making assumptions where there's a version facet that's associated with data sets that we can use that and create a version only when that changes. At the moment, we're just making a best guess. But that table gets very long, pretty cool. I don't know if I have slides, but we can talk about that afterwards. So what does that mean in the model itself? The model is very precise and highly dimensional. Jobs, data sets, and sources. I think when we think of data catalogs, we kind of see a data set and sources, and you're able to annotate. With Marquez, we also add the job. So what is that intermediate process that modified the data? And what we care about is when a job runs, it's based off the job version. So how many job versions are associated, how many runs are associated with the job version? You can think about a job version is I push out a new pipeline and that will create a new version. So if the source location job facet or metadata that's present in the OpenLineage payload is there, Marquez will use that as a way to version the job. So we just have a pointer to GitHub and a pointer to GitLab if it's present. The dataset version also are associated with runs. That's really important. When a run happens, we look at the inputs and associate those versions in this case, let's worry about schemas. So what was the version of the schema that that job used to execute and process data? So this relationship gets you pretty far. There's a few tables that don't exist, because the model itself is fairly complex. But at a high level, this is what you see. And if you are interested and you're looking to maybe explore open lineage a bit more, you'll see that the standard has job, data sets, and sources and runs. So the versioning is where Marquez is a bit more specific in how it processes events. Oh, on the left side, I just want to say, it doesn't necessarily matter, but we have relational databases and so forth. Recently, we're starting to work on streaming data sets and support for Flink, and that's being worked on in the open lineage community. So what are the design benefits? I think these are the two key things that I always talk about when you're debugging. So a lot of times you're going to modify your code, and when you do, you want to push changes out frequently, especially in the pipeline. If you're, because as data changes, so does the schema. So your data is going to be changing often, and new reports are going to have to be updated. So you might have to update SQL, which kind of happens a lot. Usually you have a BI or someone who is an analyst saying, I have a SQL, and now you have to productionize it. So oftentimes you're going to get requests to modify the SQL, and when you do, you push that out. You want to know when the change to that SQL happened. So in this case, you're able to ask the question of what job version produced and consumed datashet version X. Okay, so the benefit to that question is if you do push the code out and a week later your dashboards just don't look right, it could be because your code is invalid, the output data set itself is now corrupt, there's missing partitions if you partition your data set. So there's a lot that could go wrong here, and the Marquez model allows you to answer this type of questions. And more specifically, if you query the lineage graph, you'll be able to know how to backfill the data. So you do full incremental processing. So those are two key things that we focus on, or at least what the model can answer for you and be able to achieve. The payload, so here's just an example of the payload that you can send to the API. So under API v1 lineage, which the open lineage spec defines, is saying here are the minimum requirements. So you need an event type. So we're going to start the event. So you could view that as a, what type of event is this? Are we starting? Are we completing an event? Tell me the event time. When did this event happen? You can look at the run metadata, and there's a run ID. So you want to provide the run ID, and that's pretty important because that's what we do. That's what we use to observe the lineage metadata. So the run ID is sort of like a trace ID. You can stitch together events based off that uniquely globally. Anyways, unique ID. It's just a UID. There's job metadata, namespace, and name, but there's a lot that's not here. There's facets are a way to extend and provide more information. So here, a job has namespace and name. So my namespace, my job. But a facet is, for example, that you can add is source code location. So where's the pointer to code? So you can provide that. There's also inputs. And here we're just giving the namespace and name, but you could also provide the schema and the producer of the schema URL, which are important to know where this data came from and also who produced it and what version of the schema that you're using. And here's just another example. So before we start an event, now we completed, and this is just completing the event. So you can see the same run ID, but here we have an output. Before it was input, now you have an output. So the one important thing to note is that you don't have to provide all your input information or all your output information in the payload. You can provide it separately because on the back end, Marquez will merge all those events together. So at a high level, I just want to make this. So in a nutshell, what does that look like? There's different integrations that Open Lineage provides, and Marquez can read the events from any one of those integrations. So we have Airflow, Spark, dbt, and Flink, which is experimental. And when any of those systems, or in this case, like pipelines, execute, they're going to be using the integration to from OpenLink just to hit the REST API that Marquez provides. And on the right side, that just shows the model that's being populated. And since we work at Astronomer, I just want to point out like how this looks like in Airflow. So if you do want to get started, maybe we can skip this part, but we've got the task lifecycle metadata, the parameters. There's a lot of detail that we do extract, and there's going to be a demo later with Airflow that I can show you. But there's a SQL parser, so you do get built-in SQL parsing to understand the input data sets, but also the output data sets, and those are just tables linked to code, metadata extraction. So which I think has changed. We still use metadata extractors?
Kinda. We support in cases somebody wrote their own for older version.
Right.
We have them for like Python operator, Bash operator, because we can't modify the contract that they have.
Right.
They are in core, not in providers. So maybe in 2.8 we'll get rid of two of them.
Okay.
But generally the integration works differently.
Okay. Yeah, so it's still in flux. And I think my slides have to get updated once conditions come out. But the important thing is your Airflow instance, OpenLineage will, if you install it, you'll get all this metadata extracted from the DAGs. The adapter, I'm going to skip this part, but there's an adapter and you can see there's an interface on when to start, when a task starts, complete, and fails. So this is just the location in GitHub if you're interested in looking more at the code in Airflow. And if you want to get started, this is how you install. You do pip install OpenLineage Airflow.
That's not.
What's that?
That's not.
Or, well, I people
That's
are.
not. Yeah, we mixed one.
Okay.
Now it's Airflow OpenLineage, right?
Apache Airflow providers OpenLineage.
Okay, I'm sorry. You don't even have to do pip install anymore, right? So there's.
If you use the Docker.
It's built in the Docker.
Okay.
So just about running.
Yeah, it's in the Airflow Docker image, like folks can use that right now. And basically the logic of extracting the lineage is pushed to each operator. So each provider exposes its lineage. So it's just all tested with Airflow and providers.
Okay, yeah. So before we go into the astronomer stuff, I did want to at least just go over the Marquez UI to show you how to explore the UI itself. But maybe Peter, if you want to do that, because I think you do a great job. But I've seeded the Marquez. So Marquez right now is running locally, and we have a food delivery example. But Peter, if you want to just go through the UI and kind of show off.
Do I ask a really quick question? Just because this is also my first experience getting exposed to OpenLineage, am I understanding it right? If you're suggesting that this is basically like a standard that is like, here are a set of JSON objects that you really should be emitting from your anything that does workloads in your data stack. And it's going to be up to you to take that code from an SDK or something and embed it into all of your own like transformation workloads, ETL workloads, et cetera, et cetera.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
So it really this part here. So the standard provides all these different integrations. So I've got a touch screen, and where Marquez comes in, or the blue part is what OpenLineage says you should be, what it provides, but also saying like here's the endpoint that you should expose, and this is the shape of the data coming in. So Marquez is the actual lineage repository, or one example of that, and it actually has a database where it stores data and processes it. But you're exactly right. So here's the event, and how you process it is up to you.
I want to expand on that because that's what we do right now. But the vision is that all the data processing tools, right, will implement this itself. So for Airflow, it's kind of true right now. For Spark, we have external integration that you can import and install. You don't have to manually emit data. If you create your own like data processing tool, sure, right? But eventually, right, it would be great if you have to just configure it and point it to your backend, like Marquez, like Metaphor.
Hopefully, none of those providers make a difference.
Yes.
Okay, and just to show you, I don't know why I.
Remember Docker reinstalled itself when you were presenting.
Oh, that's why, okay, I was like, why did this stop working? I guess now I'm doing a presentation. So, just to prove, just to kind of show you, these are all the events that were collected. And if you scroll, I mean, now you can start looking at how Marquez uses those events and the APIs that it can provide. But maybe Peter, if you want to go to the different tabs and just go through the UI. No, sure. Hey. I'll go into the screen. All right, yeah, go ahead. Okay.
All right, so this is the UI. So this is kind of the landing page you get, which is a jobs page. We have the equivalent for data sets. Both of these pages will kind of navigate you to our graph page, which is there's only 4 pages in this application, so we're keeping it really simple for the purposes of our open source tool. You set us back and forward in time again.
Yeah.
Here is where you can kind of look at all of your lineage events, and you can dig in and look at all of the nested facets here. It's probably not clear, but you can kind of dig in and see the history of all the events that you had ingested into your system, ingested into our Marquez instance here. You can search your jobs and data sets up here and drive yourself to the lineage page. We're in the delivery example, so we're looking for delivery right now. So the other page here is our lineage page. So this is our graph and kind of the graph that we put together as we track job to data set metadata. And we can kind of stitch together how data flows through your system. And another important is to say here is, you kind of get Marquez for free if you use Open Lineage. I mean, it's really just a Postgres database and an API server and a React application that runs this client to get all this and track it. So some of the graphs that we see in practice are actually much, much bigger than this, say hundreds of nodes long. So we've done some work on the commercial side to consolidate that, but here you're going to get the full graph. So recently we've added some features to kind of tone down the graph, the depth level, so you can kind of move it down. There's some nuances related to the lineage query that make this number a little bit unintuitive, but we can go into that a little bit later because it's too much of a conversation. And then we can only look at the critical path if we want to as well, meaning the jobs and data sets that are touched directly as opposed to the full expansive view of everything as well. So digging into some of the tabs, for a data set, we can look at the schema. We can go through the version history, and there's only one version for this job, but we can kind of go back in time and see how the schema has changed, have there been columns added, have they been removed, the code that created this run here. We can search through our facets for a particular job. And for a job, we can kind of just see the code here and the run history as well, and look into facets here as well. So a simple tool to kind of explore the data model and how the kind of intelligence that Marquez has to show you your data pipeline and explore your metadata. So I think.
And I won't steal your thunder because I know you're going to talk about a few other things as well. But so, like Peter mentioned, there's a lot that you get from the UI. I mean, for small graphs, this is fine. But for very large graphs, that's where we're gonna start thinking about different ways to display it. But I did want to quickly show, you won't, I don't know if you can see too much on the right here. So the front end is actually just backed by an API. So if you wanted to list your namespaces and then within that namespace, you wanted to list your jobs, you get a lot of that detail as well. So what we see a lot of end users or users of Marquez in the wild, they do end up just using the API and building their UI on top. So we want to provide a UI that I think gets you fairly far. And if you have an issue, you're a data engineer, you want to create pipelines, but a lot of the power does come from the API itself. So you get your inputs, your outputs, but the interesting part is the latest runs. So you get that run ID and the different states, and this is all coming from the Open Lineage standard. You'll get the args, and you'll get the job version detail, and you also get version inputs and outputs. So if you take that version ID and you call the Marquez API, you could get the schema version for that ID. So, yeah, and also you get the additional classes along with it. If you're interested in seeing and exploring the API, you absolutely do that. And same thing for data sets. So you get the data sets there, you'll see the fields and the source data support. Okay. And this is what I want to show you. So the next part is, okay, the open source side, API is there, and we have a UI. And what have we done at Astronomer with Marquez? So for those who haven't heard of Astronomer, we provide a platform for running Airflow, but on top of that, we provide differentiating products to help you understand and troubleshoot your pipelines, in this case, DAGs. So at a very high level, we have deployments that customers run their Airflow DAGs in. Every deployment has OpenLineage installed. So we have that library for Airflow installed, and we get a stream of events. So on the stream, you'll see the event type. You'll get, in this case, just an array of events coming in for a particular DAG. And on the right side is where we build observability. So we use Marquez and OpenLineage to serve our alerting product, to serve our lineage queries, to have dashboards around data quality for your data sets. So there's a lot that we built around that. So that's all powered by those two products. There are additional APIs that we have on top, but just for general purposes, this is what the architecture looks like. And what I want to do is just show you what we built. You could, if you want to explore more, you could actually just start a trial. I picked a very simple graph. Peter, you probably know more. Of course, there's an error. Let's see. Okay. I'm no longer authenticated. That is why. Yeah. I switched my org. So we'll do that later. I wanted to first show you the alerting product that we built. With Astronomer, you have deployments, DAGs, and a few other products, but the one thing that we built with observability and Marquez, with OpenLineage and Marquez, is alerting. So you're able to define alerts. We don't have too many DAGs that we care about. The ones that we care about is we have an observability backfill DAG that executes on demand. So if we have customers that we need to backfill data for, we grab their OpenLineage events from cold storage and then populate their backend. We also apply data retention. So Marquez, as of a few releases ago, you can apply your data retention for your metadata. So we have a couple jobs that we want to be alerted if they fail. So what you're able to do is, if you want, you can rate an alert. You can choose, like you can say my best alert. And you can choose a DAG failure, DAG success, or task duration, and you can send it to different different channels. You could do Slack, PagerDuty, and email. And if you do choose email, that's awesome. You can just put your name and then select the DAG from your deployment. We have a general deployment, and then there's different DAG names there as well. And then you add your DAG. So I'm not going to go through and create the alert, but this is what we have built for our customers, and then once that's enabled, we have a rule engine that says this open lineage event has details for this particular DAG, and I need to apply, or I need to trigger an alert if that condition has been met. And I've already triggered this, so this is the email that you get. You can see that all this information is going to help you if you want to view the DAG run, if you want to view the lineage graph, it's all present in the email. So that's what you can build on the standard. And I did want to show you a graph. So I'm going to switch really quick because we have like this example. I think I picked this one, which is a CSV file. So this is the lineage graph that we have. You can see there's an input data set. So if you expand that more, I think the scheme it's going to allow you to look at the node and understand the namespace, understand the name, and on the right side is going to be the job. So there's run information that you have as well as the namespace and name of the job and also the output data set. So if I click on that, I don't think we're picking up the schema, the quality. This is just some dummy data, but this is the lineage graph that we have. You could expand the nodes, so there's a lot more collapsing that's happening, and yeah, so that's more ownership. We're able to build with Open Lineage and Marquez as the backend. So, alright, so that one signed me out. Alright, so any questions on that? So Peter is going to go through. He's got a couple of slides around the UI, but any questions on our usage of these open source projects at Astronomer, or that all just made sense? It's cool. So Peter, I'm going to hand it off to you.
Oh, okay. I did the web UI, I think, early, but I can go over. So a couple weeks ago, we were up in Toronto, and I was talking to our technical writer, and he was telling me that our website wasn't good, and wasn't a parity with Open Lineage, and it was hard to maintain, and we had 3 different documentation websites overall. So I didn't feel well one day, so I skipped some of the activities at the conference and instead rewrote the website for us and the documentation site. So it's now live, which is exciting. It's already live. I didn't know that we could get there that quickly, but it's at marquezproject.ai. And all of the source code here is available in the main Marquez repository, which is really helpful for us because before it was in this ancillary repository that nobody found and people didn't update it. So now anyone can kind of find this, go over our documentation, blogs, resources, a lot of Willie and Julian's talks are, I believe, chronologued here. And we also were able to generate our entire kind of API specification here as well. So if you wanted to kind of get your own lineage graph, it will kind of tell you how to do this on top of the Marquez model, or look at some of our blogs. Here's this meetup right now. Is the first thing in here, which is kind of self-referential and funny. But yeah, so anyone can contribute. It's on top of Docusaurus, just like Open Lineage, which our technical writer is very happy about not having to maintain a separate Gatsby implementation for that anymore. So I don't know, check it out and let us know what you think. I'm sure there's some issues. It's kind of hot off the press. So this is it.
Yeah, I think the important thing is it's centralized now. Before it was like it's 3 different areas. But we want to have the community help us keep it up to date. If there's blogs that you want us to write about or there's docs that are missing, I know we would be more than happy to fill those gaps in.
Yeah, we really want to build it up as a place where a project is chronological, kept track of. So let us know. And I think we have some Helm deployment information here. Yeah, here's how to run it on Amazon. So yeah, more here would be useful if you want to run it on GCP or Azure. So, all right.
Okay, let's, yeah, I'll see that right here. Okay, so I did want to end with the roadmap. So, you know, I wanted to at least cover what Marquez was, the open source side, give a demo of that, and also how we were using it at Astronomer. And I just want to end with a roadmap, what we're thinking of. It's been a while since, or we thought about what a version 1.0 for Marquez would look like. And I personally feel these 3 bullet points would be amazing. It's up for debate. We could just say, let's just whatever we have that becomes 1.0. This is also why everyone's here, so we could discuss what maybe 1.0 would look like. I think static lineage is important. So I mentioned I would talk about what static lineage is, and that's really the current state of the lineage graph. Marquez at the moment, the lineage query always presents the latest, but it's querying run level metadata to get to that point. So with open lineage as of 1.0, there's a concept of static data sets and static jobs, which is events outside the context of a run. So they're no longer associated with the run ID. So if you want to be able to scrape a database of the tables and schemas that are there, you don't have to provide a run ID because it actually doesn't make sense. You just have this crawler that's pulling in that information. So it makes things a bit easier, and you don't have to have that complexity of run information if there's no run to be captured. So we do want to make that part of 1.0, at least I do, because that would significantly help the query performance in lineage, because we can say we don't care about versions, we don't care about the run, we just care about the current input and output data sets for a job. Stream lineage, that is going to be something that we have to discuss, but we'd love to see stream lineage. And does open lineage have a facet for stream lineage?
I don't think.
For Flink.
For Flink?
Specifically.
Yeah.
For Flink, yeah.
And with its checkpoint
Yeah,
information?
it provides information about checkpoints.
So it's basically about capturing better the life cycle of string jobs,
Right.
right? That's like Flink, for example, as opposed or originally Marquez started by looking at batch jobs. Right? Like you write a SQL, you're running a Spark job, batch Spark job, and it has a beginning, it has an end, it's finished with running. Like a streaming jobs keeps running, and so it behaves a bit different.
So that's sort of why to support streaming lineage, we need static lineage as a prereq. That's also why I even link it out here. In the proposal, I kind of outline what data sets events are and how we version them and how that is going to look different with static lineage events. So if you're interested, you can take a look at this issue. It's 2624, and also outline some model changes that we have to make. But the fact that Marquez always depended on a job completing, because it was a lot of this ETL, which made sense, like 80% of your end users are going to be, it's going to cover a lot if you do that. And now we're running into a streaming use case, and a job doesn't complete, but yet it has to have output data sets. So we're thinking about how we have a continuous job running and how we populate that metadata and associate it with the stream. So if you want to be part of those discussions, that'd be awesome. You'll be talking to me after comment into this issue, but we're working on these proposals.
And about the static lineage, it's also implemented the job lifecycle. Originally, open lineage focused on capturing just the runs, right? Like every time the job runs, we read from, roll to, but you miss capturing things like the job has been created, but it doesn't run, right? Or the job has been deleted, it's not going to run, right? So through static lineage, you can start saying, this job is scheduled, it hasn't run yet, but here's the inputs and outputs and schedule. So that's a static event that's not for a run. And same thing, you can say, we deleted this job, it's not going to run anymore, you can remove it from the job. And on the dataset side, you can do similar things. And for people who care about assigning ownership to a dataset or updating the schema because the schema has been updated out of band from the job running, that lets you capture those things, right? Like the open lineage event we're capturing in the run, it was capturing both the dynamic and static metadata. So the static lineage is basically a subset of the existing open lineage events that focuses only on the static parts of that metadata. So basically, it's just allowing sending the same metadata you send in open lineage already, but outside the runs as kind of more like, oh, this is a static observation that made by the job, or it's been deleted or created, but there's no
Yeah, if you wanted to read this JSON, so it's a JSON schema, it's open lineage.json in the spec. You can take a look at static data sets and static jobs to learn more about the spec.
So yeah, so it's really just a subset of the metadata that was already there, but allowing various systems to exchange it. And I think that came a lot in discussions with other data catalog or data governance tools. We're like, well, we like having observation about looking at the data or making statement about the data, and we want to be able to exchange this metadata. And so that's that way that complement the spec of enabling those to exchange metadata.
And the last thing, I think this is going to be important for the amount of versions that we used to end up seeing. So just to show you something really quick. Oops. If I clear the dataset version table, this table itself gets very, very long. And the reason for that is, like I mentioned before, if your job completes, it will create a version, and no matter what, it will version the schema. So it's going to say this version, I'm going to pull all the fields, and I'm going to feed it with this new version, which results in a pretty crazy number of rows in the dataset fields table, or just in general how we model the dataset side, and that to me is an inefficient thing that we realize at scale is a problem. So what we want to do is, introduce this notion of dataset schema management. So we're going to add this dataset schema table where anytime the schema changes, we actually increment the version. And that would reduce significantly the amount of fields that get copied over. You could still do the versioning for when a run completes, but it won't copy all the fields over. And that would reduce so much data that we've seen. That's because we've seen customers that have very, very wide schemas, like crazy number. And if you always copy them over, that introduces a pretty big performance problem. So that's, I think, if we were going to look at these three, that's why I kind of mentioned dataset schema as one, because it's a simple fix with a huge, huge impact. And finally, I just want to end with what goes beyond that. I think what we've seen, since we've seen a lot of end users just take the Marquez jar and extend it, we want to make it easier for end users to say, you know what, I don't want to use Postgres, or I want to store my information in a graph database. I want to be able to send that information there. I want to be able to do some sort of alerting, have some sort of off model, and also search, which search does have a proposal on how we were thinking about that. I'm not sure what we did here. Let's see. So there's a proposal that we have for search. Also, I think the interface that we want you to say, what is the engine that you're using? Do you want to enable search? Also, is this Elasticsearch or whatever engine? So we've thought about this. We know we definitely want to do this, but we also definitely need help. And there is a proposal out there. So if anyone is interested, we even outlined the interface. So at the moment, it's just done in Postgres, which is not ideal, but we want a more search engine. And we actually want a search engine to serve our search queries. I can answer that. Oops. I want to thank you just yet. And then there's, I think Peter at some point maybe get those mock up with the lineage graph, but just they look amazing. I think what we want to do for grouping, how we want to do column level lineage, there's so much that we can do that we thought about. Because that graph that you saw was like really basic, but there's grouping. Your graphs are way more complicated than that. So what we've learned, we want to somehow provide it back to the open source community and contribute some of those things back. But yeah, that's beyond extensibility and usability. I think we have a good model. Where do we take it from here? Maybe you can help us out. We'll see. But I just want to say thanks. I think we can end it here. Just thanks everyone for joining, and hopefully you got something out of that. But anyways, that's it.
Thank you, Billy.
Thank you.